Hi, I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. In this video, I'm continuing the analysis into Nietzsche's Will to Power, and we're going to continue with section 8.0.1. Let's begin. This is Will to Power, and this is section 8.0.1. Okay. In the last section, we discussed the creation of the notions of good and evil, and the idea that this fabricated account of good and evil, this polemic account of good and evil, as created by the sacerdotal class, the priestly class, is divorced from a natural concept of usefulness and self-preservation and so on. That account of good and evil, as created by the priestly class, becomes a precondition for the creation of conscience, right? The creation of an individual's consciousness. And he implicitly gives a jab at Kant. He doesn't name him here, but he's saying that the attempt to not only in a consequentialist account or in a utilitarian account say that our actions have to conform to the product, the consequence has to conform to the greatest happiness principle, if you will, or the highest moral imperative. And in a Kantian term, it's the conformity of both the action and the intent that informs the action that must conform. And this idea of internalizing this obligation, this moral imperative, that not only must my actions conform, but I can't even think a bad thought, that my thoughts have to be motivated by conformity itself, that the reason that I'm doing my action is because my thought conforms, is the creation of, and obviously this predates Kant, but you know, Kant sort of formalized this, right? Kant definitely formalized this. That whole structure creates the condition of, if you will, I don't want to use ideological, but I'm going to keep it simple, sort of thought-based conformity. Everything that we're talking about is unempirical at this point, right? It's my mind in the sort of Cartesian dualistic sense. And that thing, this non-biological thing, has to conform to the truths of reality. And insofar as I do that, then it's not that far of a leap to talk about your conscience, right? And what is your conscience? Your conscience is this quiet voice in your head that tells you, hey, that might be wrong to do that. Don't steal, Johnny. You should, you know, help the old woman across the street. Be a good guy. Eat your greens, right? Then you have challenges to that, right? I use this example time and time again, almost ad nauseum, because I think it's one of the greatest examples ever. But Toni Morrison's Beloved, you know, killing your child in a very, very brutal manner might be better than allowing your child to enter a life of enforced slavery, right? Is it really bad to do that? That challenges a lot. That idea challenges the notion that there is this thing, good and evil, as opaque, not opaquely, but as definitively sort of demarcated, right? Good, evil, black, white. But it also, on a deeper level, in this sort of Nietzschean sense, I would argue, challenges the very notion of conscience, right? What is it that we're talking about when we're talking about consciousness, right? You know, I think contemporary scientists and biologists need to assess what it is that they're talking about when they're talking about consciousness, right? Is it anything more than sort of the holistic, integrated neural networking of the human brain, as expressed throughout our central nervous system? Probably not. But people want it to be more than that, right? It's sort of, is it awareness? Is it, and so on and so on and so on, right? So what Nietzsche would argue is that, we need to make sure that we haven't just fully absorbed, and this is sort of to recap the last lecture, we haven't just fully absorbed the methodological system that the sacerdotal class, that the priestly class has constructed to govern us, right? And the philosopher priest, sort of my concept, the philosopher priest does this, right? Without looking and assessing the truths deeply, sort of cut and paste the methodological system of the priestly class, make similar appeals, use those appeals to conform the population, to control and govern the population, but they themselves stand outside of the system, and then construct a lie in order to mandate and ensure the conformity of the population. And I spoke at length about that before. So that's all of that is needed to understand what we're going to discuss now. So at the top of page 27, section 8.0.1, the determination of an act, right? The determination of an act as good or evil is dependent on, quote, intention or the conformity of this intention to law. Direct quote from note 141, right? Good and evil, right, becomes dependent on intention or the conformity of this intention to the law. Right? So we're still talking about an intent, and that intent's conformity to the law. And Immanuel Kant's shopkeeper example is sort of prima facie the philosophical example. And there are many others, but for me it's sort of the philosophical example wherein a deontological ethic, sort of a must-based, an obligation, an ethic of obligation, mandates the conformity of not just the act. It's not so much that what I do is good, but that what I do is motivated by thoughts that are themselves in accord with the moral law, to be technical. Okay, this sort of conformity, right? This intent-based conformity, and I just finished writing a book on this idea of intention and the idea of conformity of intent. It's very, very it's very heady, it's very, very complicated discourse, but the general idea is that and this is a super ghetto version, is that if I can get you to truly believe my version of reality, I will know that you truly believe my version of reality, that you conform to what I say you ought or must do, if I don't even have to pressure you, remind you, check up, see if your actions are right. I know it by the way you talk, right? Your ideas have wholly been conformed, right? Have been structured, have been framed in terms of a system of belief that I have imposed on you. And thus, of course, all of your actions are going to conform because you believe what I say, right? This is why I am doing what I'm doing. As a quick side note, it's not traditional for a university professor to give free lectures to the extent that I'm giving it. Right? I'm definitely sort of going against the grain. Right? It's not traditional for someone in my position to do this for free, for the common good, for the greater good. Right? Especially at the level of detail. This is not like Cliff Notes version. Right? I am going against, literally, the grain of what the establishment is. Why? Because having read as much Nietzsche as I have read, I recognize that if I absorb the institution of the ivory tower, if I become that, wholly become that, there really isn't a place for me to do this. because this what I'm doing is transforming the nature of what, and it is, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but this is transforming the nature of